Hi, I'm Bob Knote, and on this episode of the Camp Chaos Chronicles, we're going to try to determine the fate of Big Red, the 1989 Rouge Edition Jaguar XJS. In other words, is it a project car or a parts car? I'm really hoping for a project. I need another project like I need two heads. Whatever. Dang it. So what's the situation here with Big Red? Well, we've had the steering column out. We replaced the ignition switch and steering lock, and that all works. It's back in the car. Now what we need to do is we need to determine if it can be made to run or not. If it can be made to run, that'd be great because it's a really solid car and it deserves to be a project for somebody. Not necessarily me, maybe one of you. The other thing we're going to do this episode is to take a look at the common issues that the 1990 Convertible has with Big Red here. And hopefully they kind of move along the same lines. As far as I'm concerned, that'd be great. Minimize the amount of time and effort I got to put into this. But for you, it'd probably be cool if they kind of diverged in different directions. Now you're going to notice that right now there's a pretty good crop of corn going on behind me. In this video, when it was shot, however, it was early on when I had first gotten the car. So bear with me on this. There's stuff going on around here. Things aren't moving in a nice sequential manner. Hopefully it will sometime, but not right now. So let's see what's going on with Big Red. So one of the first things we're going to do here is we're going to check for signal at the fuel injectors, and what I've got here is the Noid light that I use for this purpose. It's a little strobe, and if I can install this with one hand. No, I can't without dropping it. I'll be right back. Okay, there's the Noid light installed and it will flash. Now this is going to tell us two things. First of all, we got signal to the fuel injector, and being that the EFI is dependent on a speed signal through this wire, this white wire right there, that would also tell us that our ignition system is at least trying to do its job. I've tried to start this thing earlier and it hits and stumbles around and tries to run. In fact, I had it running for about 10 seconds, but not well. It was pretty awful. So we got a problem here, either with fuel or ignition or both. So let's see what happens. All right, so we got good signal at the injectors, so that's good news. Bad news is it's not doing much with it. So we've got our fuel pump installed, and we know that it pushes fuel because we were able to use it having hot wired it to the battery directly and disconnecting this regulator over here and attaching the line to a hose and directing it to a fuel container. We were able to empty out the fuel tank of the skanky old fuel. That does not tell us, however, whether it's got adequate fuel pressure or not. So what I've done is I have installed a pressure gauge. I took an old fuel line and installed actually that's a pneumatic pressure gauge, but it's been working. And we put that in place of this fuel line right here. One thing about fuel lines, if you look closely, you can see that the fuel injector lines have been replaced and clamps installed. That's because these things crack over time and are responsible for the ubiquitous engine fire. If you see a tag like that on a fuel line, that means that it's original. If we look closely here, it says 89 to 14, February 14th, 1989. This thing is original, and this is just as susceptible to cracking and breaking as fuel injector line is. Also, this one over here, same thing. And I guess that's it. Nope, right here, we got another one. So these need to be replaced at the same time that you do the fuel injector lines. Another thing we're going to do is we're going to check for spark here. Going to do 2 tests at once. Now we should be able to tell right away, without trying to start it, whether the pump is providing adequate pressure or not, just by turning the key on. It cycles the pump for a few seconds. There you go. And this thing's ready to buck. So we got good pressure. Should maintain it. We're going to be focusing our attention now on the spark tester. It's trying to run, but I'm not seeing a lot of spark. Okay, so we got fuel and we tested the injectors earlier, and we've got signal to the injectors, so we can now focus our attention on the ignition system. Now, this is a Marelli car, as is evidenced by the distributor, lack of Lucas ignition amplifier and so forth. We've also got the ABS system. A giveaway, of course, is the coils up on top. So, yeah, we're gonna have to dig that thing out and take a look inside of that cap, because we may be subject to the Marelli Curse right now. Well, where do we stand with this thing? Well, we know a few things. We know that we've got adequate fuel pressure to do the job. We know that we've got signal showing up at the fuel injectors. What we don't know is the situation with the ignition, except we do know it's not doing its job properly. It's hitting on some cylinders. In fact, earlier I actually got it to run on a few cylinders for maybe up to 10 seconds. So we know that there's something there with the ignition. In fact, the fuel injection wouldn't work if the ignition wasn't working or capable of working. So I think what this really boils down to is the old Marelli Curse. Tomorrow we're going to dig the distributor cap out and take a look and see what's underneath there. This is running exactly like my 1990 Convertible did. Had it out in the drive, and then suddenly lost about half the power. Turned around on the way home and it really started running rough, and then got it home and it stopped running altogether. So these two cars, I think, have the same problem, which means 2 distributor caps and 2 rotors, if what I suspect is correct. So I took some time this morning and pulled the distributor cap and rotor off of both the red XJS Coupe and my XJS Convertible. Both of them are Marelli engines. This is the one that is off of the red car. And usually what you would see if this was the Marelli Curse, the traditional one, you would see a lot of evidence of arcing between this terminal here and the stub on the distributor this fits onto. And you know what? This looks fairly normal. I don't see anything unusual here. A little bit of dust there, or smoke, or whatever that is, from the arcing process. Distributor cap doesn't look as new as the rotor, but that ring that you see around the center, a lot of times you will see a lot of excessive arcing there, or evidence of arcing and buildup. You can see that the spark plug terminals, the brass ones aren't bad, the aluminum ones on the outside. I don't think this is a real big deal. I'm afraid that the Marelli Curse isn't our problem here. This is the one off of the Convertible, and this is an original Marelli distributor cap, and I believe rotor, although I don't see any sort of marking on it to identify it as such. Some pretty significant pitting there. Yeah, but I mean, it's not awful. What we're seeing here, however, around the outside of that ring, you can see some pretty
significant arcing there. Not awful on the spark plug terminals. This, by the way, is an original Marelli cap, and you can feel that this is significantly heavier than the aftermarket one that I just showed you. These are generally considered to be, if you can find one of these, you need to buy it because they're such better quality. My car's got like 150,000 miles on it, and this is probably the original cap, unless it was replaced early on in its life. So what we're going to do with that is we're going to replace it with this. This cap and rotor was off a known running engine. This is the engine that I used to get my test stand set up, get the ignition and the fuel injection working on that test stand. So that engine was working, although it had a hellacious rod knock. And you can see again that we've got some pitting here, but not bad. Don't see a lot of awful stuff around that ring. We're going to take some Scotch-Brite and clean these all up. Maybe take a Dremel with a brush on it and clean things up. And the rotor, which is another aftermarket unit, I mean, that doesn't look that bad. Although I do have a new one that we're going to be putting on, and we're going to be putting that in my convertible and seeing if that runs. And if it does, great. We're leaving it that way, and we're going to order up another cap and rotor for the red car. And it's due anyway, so we're going to eliminate that piece of the puzzle. And hopefully it's not the Marelli ignition computer. Those are hard to find. Now what I've done is I've taken what appears to be a decent rotor and cap for the Marelli distributor and put it in the 90 convertible, which has the same symptoms as the red Rouge collection XJS coupe has. And here's what it does. Okay, it starts. Well, getting it to idle. And it's running on this side, and we're getting, wow, nothing but raw fuel out of that side.
Okay, so what does that mean? Well, what it means is this thing went from barely running at all to running pretty well on just one set of cylinders, the B bank. The A bank, the one that was just pumping out raw fuel, that one's not working at all. And in fact, if it was working intermittently, all it would take would be one spark at that cylinder to ignite fuel all the way back through the exhaust system, which is kind of why I beat a hasty retreat to the front of the car to turn the thing off. I mean, you got perfectly atomized fuel coming out of the back of the car. So what do we do from here? Well, we know that the new cap and rotor actually made the situation better, but we still have half the engine that's not running. We got a real smooth running left half, but the right one isn't working at all. What does that lead us to believe? Well, there's nothing else in the distributor. There's no impulse wheel or inductive pickup in the distributor. So what we need to do then is to look at some of the other components, maybe some circuitry, because these engines are arranged in such a way that the right half of the engine is an actual independent engine from the left half. And so what that means is we got two coils, one for the right, one for the left, and we've got two ignition amplifiers, one for the A bank, one for the B bank. So it could be coils, it could be the amplifiers, it could be wiring. Whatever the case is, I must make a confession here, and that is that I haven't done a whole lot of maintenance on this car. I bought it probably 6-7 years ago, and the only real driving I did with it is when Tony and I took it out to the Black Hills on a road trip the first season. Other than that, it's just been driven just a few miles, church and back, that sort of thing. Haven't actually tuned it up. I haven't replaced the spark plugs. So I think that's going to be our first order of business here today, is to remove the spark plugs. However, I think that what we're going to do at this point is to break off the Convertible series of videos from the Red Coupe series of videos, because I think we may be dealing with two different issues here. If you're interested in the Red Coupe, what happens here, stay tuned. That'll probably be next week's video. Or maybe this will be next week's video. I don't know. Depends on how things go today. Well, so where do we stand? Well, we really don't know as of yet. We've got some good information off of Big Red and also the 1990 Convertible. I think we're going to be moving in different directions though. It may be the Marelli Curse, but it may follow two different tracks. We don't know. We'll see. So if you like these videos, like, subscribe, and maybe leave some comments down below so we can know what we can do to do better. And we'll see you the next time on the Camp Chaos Chronicle.